One interview made television history, with more than 21 million homes watching, while others left Johnny Carson laughing so hard he could barely continue the show. Behind those unforgettable nights were celebrities who didn't just entertain. They created television magic. But what made these guests rise above thousands of others? Stay with us as we uncover the 7 most unforgettable, highest-impact guests ever to sit across from the king of late night. But what happened behind Johnny Carson's famous desk was much bigger than a simple interview. Night after night, careers were launched, unforgettable moments were created, and millions of people gathered around their televisions to see what would happen next. Before we count down the 7 greatest guests ever to appear on The Tonight Show, we first need to understand why sitting across from Johnny Carson was one of the biggest moments in entertainment. For more than 30 years, Johnny Carson was the face of late-night television in America. From 1962 until his retirement in 1992, he welcomed actors, comedians, musicians, athletes, politicians, and everyday people onto The Tonight Show. By the time he stepped away, he had hosted more than 4,500 episodes. His calm voice, quick wit, and ability to make almost anyone feel comfortable turned the show into a nightly tradition for millions of viewers. Unlike many interviewers, Carson never tried to make himself the center of attention. Instead, he created the perfect stage for his guests. He listened carefully. He knew exactly when to tell a joke and when to let someone finish an emotional story. If a guest was nervous, he helped them relax. If someone was naturally funny, he gave them room to shine. That rare talent made every appearance feel fresh and real. But appearing on Carson's couch also came with enormous pressure. A single great interview could completely change a person's career. A comedian who made Carson laugh often woke up famous the next morning. An actor promoting a new movie could suddenly become a household name. Even experienced stars admitted they felt nervous before walking onto a stage because they knew millions of people were watching. That is why so many celebrities call Carson's approval one of the biggest achievements of their careers. Some guests arrived with carefully prepared stories. Others simply trusted their personalities. But the most unforgettable appearances happened when nobody knew what would happen next. Those surprising moments became part of television history. Think about it for a second. Before social media, before streaming services, and before viral videos, millions of families were watching the same show at the same time. If something unexpected happened on The Tonight Show, people talked about it the next day at work, at school, and around the dinner table. Carson wasn't just hosting a television program. He was shaping popular culture. What do you think makes someone a truly unforgettable guest? Is it natural humor, powerful stories, or completely unexpected moments? Share your thoughts in the comments before we begin the countdown. Over the years, thousands of famous faces appeared on the show. Hollywood legends, music icons, sports heroes, and future superstars all took their turn under bright studio lights. Many delivered entertaining interviews, but only a handful created moments that people still remember decades later. Some guests made Carson laugh until tears filled his eyes. Others surprised him with incredible talent or unforgettable stories. A few connected with audiences in such a deep way that their appearances became part of television history. Choosing only 7 names is not easy. There are many worthy contenders, and fans still debate the greatest guests even today. But this list is built on a combination of audience impact, cultural influence, memorable performances, Carson's own reactions, and the lasting legacy of those appearances. Public interviews, television archives, and longtime entertainment writers have all helped shape this countdown. As we move through the list, you'll notice something interesting. These guests were very different from one another. Some were masters of comedy. Others were brilliant storytellers. A few barely needed to say a word before the audience burst into applause. What united them was their ability to create unforgettable television. And here's something even more surprising. Several of the biggest stars in Hollywood appeared on Carson many times, yet they still didn't make the very top of this list. That tells you just how extraordinary the guests ahead truly were. The countdown begins with someone who didn't simply entertain Johnny Carson. They created moments so unique that viewers still search for them decades later. And once you see why this guest earned a place among the greatest, you'll understand why the name still to come change late-night television forever. The countdown begins with 3 guests who each brought something completely different to Johnny Carson's stage. One made the audience laugh without trying too hard. Another turned every visit into an event. And one became so closely linked with The Tonight Show that many viewers couldn't imagine the program without them. But the biggest surprises are still waiting ahead. Guest number 7, Betty White, the charm that never failed. When Betty White walked onto Carson's stage, there was an instant feeling of comfort. She didn't rely on shocking stories or dramatic headlines. Instead, she won people over with warmth, quick humor, and perfect timing. White had already built a successful career in television, but her appearances on The Tonight Show reminded everyone why audiences loved her so much. She could laugh at herself, tell a funny story, and keep up with Carson's fast wit without missing a beat. What made her interviews special was how natural they felt. Nothing seemed forced. Watching Carson and White talk was like watching 2 old friends catching up after a long day. Their conversations often drifted from Hollywood stories to everyday life, making viewers feel as though they were sitting in a room with them. It was simple television, yet incredibly powerful. But Betty White was only warming up our countdown. The next guest had a very different kind of relationship with Carson. Guest number 6, Steve Martin, the master of the unexpected. Before modern stand-up comedy became a worldwide phenomenon, Steve Martin was changing the rules. Whenever Martin appeared on The Tonight Show, nobody knew what would happen next. He could enter wearing an outrageous costume, play the banjo, tell jokes that seemed completely absurd, or perform comedy that made no logical sense. And somehow, it always worked. Johnny Carson admired performers who could surprise an audience, and Steve Martin became one of the very best at doing exactly that. Their chemistry was impossible to fake. Carson often struggled to hide his own laughter, as Martin pushed comedy into places television audiences had never seen before. Many comedy fans believe Martin helped shape a new generation of performers by proving that being different could become your greatest strength. His Carson appearances weren't just interviews. They became performances people remembered for years. Yet even Steve Martin wasn't the most familiar face on Carson's famous couch. That honor belongs to our next guest. Guest number 5, Bob Hope, a living piece of show business history. Long before many Hollywood stars were born, Bob Hope had already become one of America's biggest entertainers. By the time he appeared with Johnny Carson, Hope represented an earlier generation of television and radio legends. But instead of feeling outdated, he felt timeless. Carson respected Hope enormously. Their conversations reflected that mutual admiration, blending old Hollywood memories with modern humor. Hope often shared stories about performing for American troops during wartime, meeting presidents, and working alongside some of the greatest entertainers of the 20th century. For younger viewers, these interviews offered a rare look into entertainment history through someone who had actually lived it. For older viewers, they brought back memories of a golden age that seemed impossible to replace. Watching Carson and Hope together felt like watching one legendary host honor another. If you enjoy discovering the hidden stories behind television's biggest legends, consider subscribing. Some of the most unforgettable moments in entertainment history happened long before social media, and the biggest names in this countdown are still ahead. By now, one thing becomes clear. The greatest Carson guests weren't chosen simply because they were famous. They were chosen because every visit created something special. Some made audiences laugh harder than anyone else. Some shared stories that only they could tell. And some had a connection with Johnny Carson that transformed an ordinary interview into television history. But the next chapter features 2 guests whose appearances reached an entirely different level. One who left Carson laughing almost beyond control, and another whose interviews became some of the most watched and talked about moments of the entire series. Just when audiences thought they had seen everything, 2 guests took The Tonight Show to another level. One turned every appearance into pure comedy. The other became one of Johnny Carson's closest friends on television. Their interviews weren't simply entertaining. They became part of American pop culture, replayed and remembered for decades. Guest number 4, Robin Williams, the mind that never stopped. When Robin Williams stepped onto Johnny Carson's stage, the energy in the studio changed instantly. It was almost impossible to predict what he would say next. Williams spoke at incredible speed, jumping from one character to another, changing voices, creating imaginary conversations, and making jokes out of almost anything around him. Even Carson, known for his quick thinking, sometimes had no choice but to sit back and enjoy the ride. The audience loved every second. What made Williams so remarkable was that his comedy never felt rehearsed. It looked as if his imagination worked faster than anyone could follow. One joke became 3. 3 became 10. Before anyone realized it, the entire studio was roaring with laughter. Carson often struggled to keep a straight face. Yet behind all the humor was a deeply thoughtful person. During quieter moments, Williams spoke honestly about acting, family, and the pressure that came with success. Those conversations showed another side of him, a kind, intelligent man who understood both joy and sadness. That balance made him unforgettable. Years later, many fans still return to those interviews because they captured Williams at his very best. Brilliant, unpredictable, and completely alive. But if Robin Williams represented unstoppable energy, the next guest represented something equally powerful: trust. Guest number 3, Don Rickles, the only man who could roast Johnny Carson. If there was one person who could walk onto The Tonight Show and immediately start making fun of Johnny Carson himself, it was Don Rickles. Rickles built his career on insult comedy. He teased everyone: movie stars, politicians, athletes, even members of the audience. But somehow, people laughed instead of feeling offended. That was his gift. His humor came with a smile that told everyone it was all part of the act. When Rickles visited Carson, their friendship became obvious within minutes. He would joke about Carson's clothes, his hair, his career, sometimes even the studio band. Instead of becoming defensive, Carson fired jokes right back. Their exchanges felt less like an interview and more like two lifelong friends trying to outwit each other. One famous moment became television legend. Rickles accidentally broke Johnny Carson's cigarette box while appearing on the set when Carson was away. Thinking nobody would notice, he quietly left. The next evening, Carson unexpectedly walked onto Rickles' own television show carrying the broken cigarette box, pretending to be furious. He interrupted the program and jokingly demanded an explanation. The audience exploded with laughter. It wasn't planned. It wasn't rehearsed. It was two comedy legends creating television history in real time. That playful moment is still remembered as one of late-night television's greatest surprise appearances. More importantly, it showed the deep respect between the two men. Carson didn't interrupt because he was angry. He interrupted because he knew audiences would love it, and they certainly did. Almost everyone has that one friend who can tease them without hurting their feelings. Those friendships are built on trust, respect, and years of shared memories. Carson and Rickles reminded us that genuine friendship often creates the funniest moments of all. By this point in our countdown, the pattern is becoming impossible to ignore. The greatest guests weren't simply famous celebrities. They created moments no writer could script. Moments that happened naturally. Moments that millions witnessed together. Moments that are still being watched decades later. But even Don Rickles couldn't claim the number one spot. The final two guests changed The Tonight Show in ways that reached far beyond comedy. One appearance drew one of the largest audiences in the program's history, while the guest at number one became the very definition of a perfect Carson interview. And their stories are even more remarkable. One interview didn't just become another successful night on The Tonight Show. It became a cultural event. People who rarely stayed up late made sure they were watching. Newspapers covered it. Millions talked about it the next morning. For one unforgettable evening, Johnny Carson wasn't just hosting television's biggest late-night show. He was hosting one of the most anticipated interviews in entertainment history. Guest number 2, Elizabeth Taylor. Hollywood royalty arrives. When Elizabeth Taylor agreed to appear on The Tonight Show, excitement spread quickly. Taylor wasn't just another movie star. She was one of the most famous women in the world. With Academy Awards, legendary films, famous relationships, and constant media attention, almost everything she did became front-page news. But despite all her fame, she rarely gave long television interviews. That made her appearance with Johnny Carson feel like a once-in-a-lifetime event. As she walked onto the stage, the audience welcomed her with thunderous applause. Carson greeted her warmly, but he also understood something important. He didn't need to compete with her presence. He simply needed to create the right atmosphere, and that's exactly what he did. Instead of asking aggressive questions, Carson guided the conversation with respect, humor, and genuine curiosity. Taylor responded in kind. She laughed easily. She shared stories from Hollywood's golden years. She reflected on the challenges of living under constant public attention. For millions watching at home, it felt like seeing the real Elizabeth Taylor instead of the glamorous image that usually appeared in magazines. That honesty made the interview special. According to television ratings and industry reports, her appearance attracted one of the largest audiences in the history of The Tonight Show, with more than 21 million homes tuning in to watch. It proved that even in an era without social media, a single television interview could become a national event. Carson understood why people admired Taylor. Yes, she was beautiful. Yes, she was famous. But she was also surprisingly funny, thoughtful, and willing to laugh at herself. That combination made viewers feel connected to her in a way they hadn't before. Their conversation flowed naturally. There were no awkward pauses. No forced jokes. No uncomfortable moments. Just two professionals creating television that still feels timeless. As the interview continued, viewers saw more than a Hollywood icon. They saw a woman who had experienced enormous success, heartbreaking personal losses, worldwide attention, and the pressure of living every major moment in public. Carson never rushed those emotional moments. He allowed silence when silence mattered. He allowed laughter when laughter felt right. That balance became one of the defining strengths of his career. Many interviewers wanted dramatic headlines. Johnny Carson wanted genuine conversations. And audiences could always tell the difference. If you're enjoying these forgotten stories behind television history, subscribe for more documentaries that reveal the moments, friendships, and turning points that shaped the biggest stars the world has ever known. Elizabeth Taylor's appearance reminded everyone why The Tonight Show was unlike any other program. It wasn't just about promoting a new film. It wasn't simply celebrity gossip. It was about allowing viewers to spend an evening with someone they admired. That formula kept audiences coming back for decades. But even this legendary interview couldn't take the top spot, because one guest stood above everyone else. Not because of record-breaking ratings, not because of shocking headlines, but because every single appearance felt effortless. Every visit became memorable. Every conversation created laughter. And Johnny Carson himself often admitted there was something truly special about this person. The number one guest wasn't just unforgettable. They became part of the very identity of The Tonight Show. After thousands of interviews and countless Hollywood legends, one guest stood above all the rest. It wasn't because of the biggest movie, the highest ratings, or the loudest personality. It was because every single appearance reminded viewers why Johnny Carson was the greatest late-night host of his generation. Together, they created television that felt effortless, and that's what made it unforgettable. Guest number one, Bob Newhart, the master of quiet comedy. When Bob Newhart appeared on The Tonight Show, there were no flashy entrances or dramatic announcements. He didn't need them. The moment he sat beside Johnny Carson, the audience knew they were about to witness something special. Newhart's style was completely different from many comedians of his time. While others relied on loud voices or wild expressions, he spoke softly. He paused before delivering a punchline. He trusted the audience to follow every word. That simple approach became his greatest strength. Johnny Carson admired comedians who respected timing, and few people understood timing better than Bob Newhart. The two men shared a rare chemistry. Carson would ask a simple question. Newhart would answer with a calm story that slowly built toward an unexpected ending. The audience would begin smiling, then laughing, then erupting into applause. Even Carson often leaned back in his chair, laughing harder with every passing sentence. It looked effortless, but every pause, every look, and every carefully chosen word reflected years of experience. That was the magic of Bob Newhart. He proved that comedy didn't have to be loud to be unforgettable. Over the years, Newhart became one of Carson's most trusted and most frequently welcomed guests. Whenever television viewers saw his name announced, They knew they were in for an entertaining evening. There was never any need for controversy. No shocking headlines. No publicity stunts. Just outstanding conversation and timeless comedy. That consistency earned Newhart something very few celebrities ever achieve: complete trust from both Johnny Carson and the audience. Behind the scenes, Carson respected guests who arrived prepared, treated everyone kindly, and understood the rhythm of live television. Newhart checked every one of those boxes. Their interviews felt relaxed because both men genuinely enjoyed each other's company. That authenticity cannot be rehearsed. It has to grow over years of friendship and mutual respect. Television critics have often pointed to Newhart's appearances as examples of how a great talk show interview should work. There was humor. There was storytelling. There were moments of surprise. Most importantly, there was genuine connection. That connection is why many longtime fans continue to rank Bob Newhart among Johnny Carson's finest guests. Looking back today, it's easy to understand why. The greatest television moments aren't always the loudest. Sometimes they're the quiet conversations that make millions of people smile at exactly the same time. Think about someone who has always made you smile without trying too hard. Sometimes the people who speak the softest leave the biggest mark on our lives. That's the kind of lasting impact Bob Newhart had on generations of viewers. As our countdown comes to an end, one lesson becomes impossible to ignore. Every guest on this list was different. Betty White brought warmth. Steve Martin delivered fearless creativity. Bob Hope connected generations. Robin Williams amazed everyone with limitless imagination. Don Rickles transformed friendship into comedy. Elizabeth Taylor turned an interview into a national event. And Bob Newhart reminded us that simple, honest storytelling never goes out of style. Together, they represent the very best of what The Tonight Show starring Johnny Carson offered for 3 remarkable decades. Johnny Carson himself was the common thread connecting them all. His gift wasn't just asking questions. It was making people feel comfortable enough to reveal who they truly were. That rare talent changed late-night television forever and influenced generations of hosts who followed, from David Letterman and Jay Leno to Conan O'Brien and beyond. But this is only one chapter in the incredible history of entertainment. Behind many of Hollywood's biggest stars are stories even more surprising than anything seen on late-night television. Join us in the next documentary as we uncover another unforgettable journey filled with fame, struggle, triumph, and the hidden moments that change history forever.